I'm your host, Kabir Segal. Great to be here with you all, coming to you live from the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. Hi to everyone watching at home, and hi to my mom and dad who are watching downstairs. Thanks for watching. So look, the quarantine series is all about shining the light on creative people, musicians, filmmakers, authors. These are the people that create the content, and we're really appreciating them now during this time of pandemic. We're all squirreled away at home. So if you can, please check out the projects you learn about on this broadcast. I think artists and audiences, we need each other. In addition, I think it's important to think local. So the local film festival, maybe you can stream locally from them, or the local bookshop, local musicians. So let's be there for each other during this time of international din and tumult. So also, if you want to learn who will be on the broadcast, pretty simple. Just subscribe to any of my social media channels. We're available pretty much on all channels, I think. So, get in the know. Let us know where you're watching from. Got a special show today. Got someone in Kansas City today. I think it's our first ever. So we got Atlanta in the house. We got Kansas City in the house. Let us know where you're watching from. Drop a comment. I'm always really excited to learn about everyone watching overseas. And so just drop a comment and we'll learn about you. If you have a question, I don't have to ask all the questions. You can drop a question in the comment field, no matter if you're watching live or if you're watching on the rebroadcast. Let us know what is on your mind. All right, so that's the bit. Now for the main event. Truly a main event, a great main event today. An incredible filmmaker. She is doing things really at the highest level. She's an award-winning filmmaker, documentary producer, director. Her new film, Transhood, which we'll talk about, premiered at the AFI Docs Festival and is available now for streaming on HBO Max. So make sure you are an HBO Max subscriber. We're going to talk about that film more at length. She co-created and executive produced Pink Collar Crimes on CBS. Please welcome the maestra herself, Sharon Liese. Welcome. Great to see you. First, Sharon, I want to ask you, how are you doing? How are you doing during this time of a pandemic?
Well, I'm doing my best to not have Zoom fatigue, and just trying to work as much as I can. As a filmmaker being in this industry, it's a little difficult to do what we need to be doing, but we've all been finding creative ways to do it and do it safely. And so I'm grateful for that. And what's interesting about, I think for me, is that I'm a filmmaker, producer who does not live on the coast. So I'm not in LA, though I am at times. And I don't live in New York. I live in the middle of the country. And people have always asked me before the pandemic, how do you do it from the middle of the country in Kansas City? And I think a lot of people are learning how I do it because they're doing that right now.
Yeah, well said. People ask me that about Atlanta too. It's like, with computers, it's all screen time at the end of the day. Sharon, walk me through your typical day in quarantine. Do you wake up at the same time? Is there structure to your day? What is it like for you?
My days are probably somewhat similar because I office out of my home. I used to travel more for my projects when I was filming things in different cities, and I still travel somewhat. But my routine is I do a little work early in the morning. I try to get some exercise, and then I go back to doing what I'm doing. And usually I have projects in different levels of production. So there are things that I have in development. There may be things that I'm editing. There's things that I'm pitching. And then like right now with the release of Transhood, then there's then I'm doing some, media interviews and doing some things to represent the film.
Just like this. So tell me, let's talk about your incredible film. Available on HBO Max. Walk us through. It was a very lengthy time working on this project. So, why did you pick this film in particular? Walk us through what it took to make it, which I know sounds like a very broad question, but over to you.
Yeah, well, I really like telling coming of age stories, and I have done projects that I've actually produced and directed over time as well. Like I did 2 series of High School Confidential where I followed girls through high school for 12 girls each time for all 4 years of their high school experience. So it's really not a new thing for me to be doing something where I follow kids over time. I didn't know when I first started this project that I would be following these kids for 5 years. I knew it would be at least a year because I like to see the evolution and transformation as kids grow up. So that was really important to me with this film. And it's also really convenient when you live in Kansas City to be able to find subjects in the city that you live in to be able to film. So I learned about the Transgender Institute in Kansas City and got in touch with them because I was really surprised and delighted to hear that there was this kind of support for transgender kids right here in Kansas City. And they welcomed me and invited me in, and I went to some of their support groups and met with some of the families and fell in love with the kids, and really just formed some relationships with the families that lasted, over 5 years, going on 7 now, to be able to tell their stories. And it was an amazing journey for me, and I know for them it's been an amazing journey as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the participants or the subjects of the film. What did they think of their portrayal? Were they surprised? Were they involved in the cut? Was it like, hey, ta-da, here it is? So what was their initial reaction to seeing their portrayal in the film?
Well, when you're filming a group of people over a long period of time, they kind of forget what they filmed, years before. So, so definitely when they saw it before it premiered, that's when they actually saw the film. They were a lot of them were they were surprised, because they hadn't remembered some of the things, but I also think they were all pretty happy about it because they liked seeing the stories of the other kids and the other families, and there were a lot of tears, there was a lot of laughing, there was some like not being able to look at the screen at times, and you asked earlier about the pandemic, and this was the first time that I ever showed kind of did the pre-screening with my subjects through Zoom. Because I couldn't do it with them in person, and I'm used to being able to hug them and watch their faces. Though I was able to watch them through Zoom, it was really a little different experience for me, not being able to be actually in the same room with them and really in close proximity. But I was able to Zoom with them and record it so I could go back and watch their reactions and everything. So different times.
Exactly. Well, so much of this is oriented on the family. What has the initial reaction been to the film? Have you heard from people who are experiencing this in their own family situations, and how has that helped them?
It's been so incredibly amazing and overwhelming to me what the response has been. I mean, from film critics, the film's probably had at least 35 really positive reviews, including Time Magazine, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and really, I see that these critics have really understood the film and understood the subjects and the families. But probably even more touching to me is the private messages that I get and the tweets that I see and the posts that I see where people are either saying that they see themselves in the film. So I know it has trans representation that maybe these people have never, these kids have never experienced before. And that's wonderful. And then in terms of allies and parents, they're seeing things that they never understood. And I think that it has created a lot of empathy because people they feel like they know these kids. They feel like they might be the kids next door, and it's a family and families that they're just getting to know, and that can go a real long way.
Is there anything you want to see maybe change in our culture as respect to I don't know, even government policy. How can we be more humane towards this community? How is you making this film? Has it sort of enlightened you as to what we can do as a community to be more welcoming to this community?
Well, for one, I would love people to educate themselves more because, I mean, transphobia is real. And I think it stems from fear of the unknown. And if people could learn more about transgender people and kids and know what language is really appropriate and how to be really supportive and affirming, that could really help. I also think that people should learn more about their local legislators and what kinds of laws and legislations are being proposed, because it's really threatening out there for trans kids, especially because some of the gender affirming health services are really at risk with some of these the legislation that's being proposed.
Yeah, I hear you. I want to ask some nitty-gritty questions now about the film, just in terms of the production. A lot of people like to know the relationship between the editor and you. How did that work? Do you send the notes how do you send the notes over? What was that dynamic like?
Well, my editor, Dava Witsinet, is really amazing. I mean, she is such a storyteller in her own right and a director, and I was really lucky to have her and Nick Ander. I was in LA a lot. They're in LA, and we were at Bunamuri Productions, and that's who was the studio that I co-produced this with. And they were just amazing because we had 4 families, 4 kids, 5 years. So we had to deal with a timeline. We had to deal with different story arcs that happened at different points in time, and then telling the stories of these kids within the context of their families, and then the context of what was going on in Kansas City and what was going on nationally. So there were a lot of storytelling wheels turning. So I had a great relationship with the supervising editor Dava and our editor Nick, and we just we carted everything out, and then we were just putting it together scene by scene.
Yeah, it seems like that, and it came together really so beautifully. I also want to ask one question about the music that really appealed to me too. Talk about the composer and how you thought about marrying the visual image with the sound.
Well, one of the things, our theme song was Cut Copy, and that was such an amazing song that Nick found to go with it. But working with the composers, that's always really fun and tedious. And I'll have to say that Dava is so great with music. So it was wonderful to, there were probably, I don't know, we may have had like 40 different cues in the film. So it took a lot of work, a lot of going back and forth.
Yeah, but I don't just say this lightly. The music really appealed to me, and it seemed like it was so well crafted for the story itself. And so, kudos to that coming to life in that way. I want to ask you and switch gears and talk about another project, the Thegnomist. So, I was unfamiliar with the story and reading up about your background. What a quite interesting and compelling, almost a magical story. Talk us through this project. How'd you come up with it? How'd you get involved?
So this project was 5 years ago, and it was another one that originated in Kansas City. And I just heard about this thing that was happening on a walking path in kind of a foresty area near my house. And there were these little gnome homes that were kind of cropping up in the trunks of trees and different parts of this little forest. And what was interesting about it was that nobody knew where they were coming from. And so I went out there to see what was going on. And when I got there, it was really unexpected for me that not only did people not know who was doing it, but in some ways people didn't care. What they wanted to do was just be present for the magic, and they all sort of suspended their disbelief and just felt like there were fairies there and gnomes living in these houses. And it was just bringing crowds and crowds of people, and it was also bringing healing to several people that I came in contact with. And then, as you see in the story, we meet a family that is incredibly healed in a very magical way through going to the forest and visiting the trees and the families that lived in the forest.
How did the special effects work? How does that? I've never done anything really with special effects. So how does that work? How involved are you with the special effects team? And how much of that aesthetic are you able to kind of influence?
Well, I had a pretty scrappy, small production crew for that film. We did put little GoPros and little tiny lights inside the houses so that we could light them up, so you could actually see when someone opened the door, and you could see their face, and you could see all the wonder on the kids' faces. So that was one of the special effects that we did. But some of the other things that were actually happening by the Thegnomist, who was creating this beautiful magic in the forest. So if you see some of the fog was made with dry ice, but we weren't doing that because we weren't producing it. It was actually being done by the secretive Thegnomist.
Uh-huh. Very cool. How can people see this picture?
It used to be on YouTube, so I just found out this week that it's not. But I think that if you Google the Thegnomist, Great Big Story, because it was acquired by CNN, Great Big Story, you can find it that way.
Got it. Beautiful. I really do want to see it. I want to ask you also, you mentioned Kansas City. Talk a little bit about the film industry in Kansas City. Is it small? Do you all know each other? What is the community like there?
Well, it's gotten bigger because there are a lot of productions that have come here. So I know a lot of DPs who I work with here, and great audio people, and people that are doing some really, really good work that have had films at Sundance. Kevin Wilmot, who works with Spike Lee a lot, and he just won an Oscar last year for Black Klansman for screenwriting. He's in this area. So I feel like there are more resources than people would expect to find here. So that's really, really great.
I'm excited to know that there's an ecosystem there, and it's vibrant. What are the types of projects that you get involved with? Because you have a fascinating and background, and the topics are quite different. So how do you know when it's a Sharon Liese project?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, my production company is called Horizon Productions, HER. So I do tend to be attracted to stories that are about women, or maybe stories that more women would be attracted to. I tend to be attracted to stories with a lot of heart, and stories that will inspire empathy, and also social justice. I tend to like things that have the possibility of changing minds and hearts. So that's kind of where those are the things that I get attracted to, and something that's an intimate storytelling. There are big things like you're in Atlanta, and there's, I'm sure there are lots of documentary filmmakers looking at doing a story on the runoff elections. Like, that would not necessarily, I'd be interested in something like that, but that's probably not the story I would tell if it if it was the grand approach to that. But if it maybe was just about one candidate, that would be a story I would be interested in telling.
Like a Stacey Abrams, but that film has been made, I think, already.
Right. Oh yeah, I do that in a heartbeat.
Cool. Sharon, really a pleasure to have you on the show. I want to get your social media up there at horizonproductions.com. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Wishing you all the best. That's our show today. If you want to learn who'll be on the broadcast, just subscribe to my social media. Stay safe out there. Stay well. Take care of the art. It'll take care of you. Bye, everyone.